Hi everyone, this is DKeys bringing you the DPS Dagger focused Elementalist build that I'd recommend after the December 2013 patch. While it doesn't have the same might stacking potential as a Scepter Hammer build or the DPS potential of a staff build, it is a very self-sustainable build with lots of flexibility and still good damage output. The adjustment to the fire trait line in this recent patch has solidified the place of base 30-30-0-0-0 builds as DPS builds. There are also some defensive fresh air builds that are popular in PvE, but even when soloing, I often lead towards this offensive trait distribution. The base of this build uses 30 points in both fire and air. It is not good to make use of this adept level minor trait in fire because it involves sustaining damage. For the adept level major, take burning precision, or if other members in the party can maintain 100% burning uptime, take internal fire for a marginal DPS boost, or conjurer if you plan on using lightning hammer and fiery greatsword frequently. The master level minor trait, Sunspot, inflicts some damage on nearby foes when attuning to fire. The major trait that I'd recommend is now Pyromancer's Alacrity, particularly for the reduced recharge on Flame Wall. Flame Wall is essential to not only might stacking, but also proccing fresh air on a regular basis because it ticks once per second. The Grandmaster minor trait, Burning Rage, is a 10% damage modifier on burning foes. My Grandmaster major trait, Persisting Flames, extends the duration of the fire fields from Flame Wall and burning speed by 2 seconds, and allows me to grant 10 seconds of Fury in addition to the normal 3 stacks of 20-second might to party mates within 360 range of my blasts in any fire field. In air, the minor trait Zephyr Speed isn't very noticeable. My adept level major trait, Bolt to the Heart, is another damage modifier that activates when an enemy's health is low. The master level minor trait, Lightning Strike, does about as much damage as one strike of a lightning whip to my target when I attune to air. This means that as I frequently swap in and out of air attunement, the additional damage from this trait, as well as Sunspot, will add up over a battle. For my master level major trait, I take Air Training for a 10% damage modifier when attuned to air. The Grandmaster minor, Weak Spot, will help me stack vulnerability. Because my rotations have times when my attacks will strike an enemy between 3 and 4 times per second and crit almost all the time, I can expect to contribute between 4 and 7 stacks of vulnerability on enemies with the Unshakable buff, and much more on lower ranked enemies. Using a lightning hammer instead of lightning whip will reduce these numbers because of its lower rate of attack and longer times between firefield applications, but is still not negligible. The Grandmaster major trait, Fresh Air, is central to the rotations I'll be using for this build video. The remaining 10 points I place in Earth or Arcana depending on if I can build more offensively or if I need better defenses. If I can trait for more DPS, I put 10 points in Earth. I won't get much use from the adept level minor trait because I won't be staying in Earth very long at any time. For my major trait, I will take Stone Splinters for the 10% damage modifier when I'm within 600 range of my target, which when using Dagger is almost all the time. If I need more defensive capabilities, I will put 10 in Arcana. The adept minor will provide some Fury, but is minuscule compared to the group Fury provided by blasting in fire fields through Persisting Flames. For the Adept Major, I take Renewing Stamina for nearly 100% vigor uptime as long as I'm attacking an enemy. The base precision of this build is very high, so the benefits of a mixed set of Berserkers and Assassin's armor that is seen in the standard Scepter Hammer builds are not as clear in this Fresh Air based build. The difference between a full Zerk set and a mixed set at both the exotic and ascended levels for this build is within 0.5%, and neither set is consistently above the other in effective power. Usually the difference is food choice, but some precision is wasted in this build when using mixed armor and wielding a lightning hammer. My exotic armor set is full berserkers with superior runes of the scholar. Since it is optimal for other elementalist builds, such as the scepter hammer build, my ascended armor set will consist of an assassin's helm, chest, and pants, with berserkers, shoulders, gloves, and boots for that 3% boost in critical chance. Again, I would be using superior runes of the scholar with that ascended set. My trinkets are full ascended berserkers. I have daggers with force, undead slaying, and energy sigils, and I also have focuses with night, undead slaying, and energy sigils. I also have a set of weapons to stack strength or power, as well as perception, depending on my build and party composition. In many cases, the recommended stack and food combinations are similar across armor levels and attribute combinations for this build. I assume Fury for all my calculations, and consider Banner of Discipline, Signet of Fire, and Spotter. When including food, stacks, and buffs, I try to keep my crit chance above 90% so that fresh air activates reliably. I use appropriate slaying potions in dungeons, and either sharpening stones or scale venom in fractals. Only use maintenance oils if you don't use Signet of Fire, don't have a Banner of Discipline, and don't have Spotter. The reason why I sometimes don't use Scale Venom in Fractals is that the auto attack in Water Attunement with a Dagger sometimes has a chance to apply the negative effects of Scale Venom to myself on its return. For general dungeon touring, I use precision food, such as candy dragon rolls or minotaur steaks, and use appropriate stacking weapons depending on party composition. Whenever possible, I'll use the new heal skill, Arcane Brilliance, if I don't need a burst heal, because it is a blast finisher and works with traits that proc an arcane skill use. Additionally, it is a guaranteed recharge for air attunement because of fresh air, because this skill always hits for critical damage. If I do need a burst heal, I will take Glyph of Elemental Harmony because its quick channel is easy to fit in between dodges. If I need condition removal, I'll take Ether Renewal. Or if I'm fighting a foe with Retaliation or Flame Shield, I'll take Signet of Restoration. The high number of hits per second with this build and the rotations that I'll propose mean that you'll be getting a lot of passive healing from the Signet. My utilities are Signet of Fire for the passive 180 bonus to precision, and Arcane Wave for the blast finisher and for another guaranteed recharge for air attunement because of fresh air and the fact that Arcane Wave always does critical damage. My third utility is usually Arcane Shield because it is a stun breaker and once activated will block the next 3 attacks sustained over 5 seconds. Another defensive utility I'll take, especially in situations where I may need to res, is Mist Form, which is a 3-second invulnerability. If I need more condition removal, I'll take Cleansing Fire, which will cure 3 conditions and will burn nearby foes. If I'm not sure what I need to take, or if I need to pull mobs from a far range, I'll use Arcane Blast. Since this build has a high number of hits per second, Glyph of Elemental Power can be an interesting choice for some situations. If my group is struggling to maintain burning uptime, I can cast this in Fire Attunement so that my spells have a higher chance to apply burning on hit. If cast in Earth Attunement, it has a chance to apply Cripple, which means that I and my allies can kite around foes at max melee range to reduce the damage that we take. Glyph is also a stun breaker, even though in most cases you plan its use and don't actually use it reactionary to break a stun. Another glyph I use is Glyph of Storms. Cast in air, it will blind 5 enemies every 3 seconds for the 10-second duration of the skill. I'll also cast it in air attunement to help compensate for the lack of AoE damage that is present with the Dagger focus set. Some other situational skills that I use from time to time are Signet of Earth, which is a base 3-second immobilize, and Lightning Flash, which has some interesting uses with Fiery Greatsword, and also is just very useful for mobility. Sometimes I may throw a conjure weapon, such as Lightning Hammer, on there. Lightning Hammer has a very powerful auto attack chain that automatically blinds and is a blast finisher on the 3rd hit. Frostbow I mainly use for the AoE, which is its skill 4, and is very useful against large groups of enemies and large structures. Skill 5 can also immobilize an enemy, so you can use that instead of Signet of Earth. My elite is usually Conjure Fiery Greatsword for the high amount of DPS, though sometimes, and especially while soloing, I'll use Glyph of Elementals and cast it in Earth attunement so that I have something else to take aggro for me. When running through trash mobs, I swap to defensive skills that have a low chance of putting me in combat, such as Glyph of Elemental Harmony, Mist Form, Lightning Flash, Arcane Shield, and sometimes even Cleansing Fire if I need condition removal. Dagger Focus has a number of skills that can help me make a trash run. Burning Speed can help me cover ground quickly, and the fire field doesn't last for very long, so there's a lower chance of me being put in combat. In air, Swirling Winds can help block projectiles, and in earth as well, I can use Obsidian Flesh or Magnetic Wave. For a high DPS rotation for Dagger Focus, start in fire and cast Flame Wall under the enemy. Then, starting at 300 range, use Burning Speed through the enemy so that it takes damage from the trail as well as the blast. While Burning Speed is channeling, swap to Air Attunement. Auto attack 4 times while casting Arcane Wave and moving into the Flame Wall, then swap to Earth. Use Arcane Brilliance, Magnetic Wave, and then Ring of Earth. While Ring of Earth is channeling, swap back to Air. Auto attack 7 times while positioning yourself 300 range away from the enemy, then swap to Fire. Flame Wall, then Burning Speed while swapping to Air again. Auto attack in air 4 times while moving to melee range, and then swap to Water. Cast Frozen Burst, then Comet while swapping back to Air. Auto attack 7 times while moving to 300 range, then swap to Fire to repeat this rotation. The reason why this rotation swaps in and out of air so frequently is to maximize the number of activations of the minor trait Electric Discharge for additional DPS. We time the attunement swaps so that we can gain the 10% damage modifier on some of the harder hitting skills that aren't air skills. Timing swaps to air attunement is important. If you swap too early, you may prevent the next queued skill from channeling, but if you swap after the skill has finished, you miss that 10% damage modifier. You can queue 1 weapon skill to start after the currently channeling skill has finished, but any skill will interrupt an auto attack if that auto attack is enabled, and any slot skill will interrupt a weapon skill. Instants don't interrupt channeled skills, so it's most efficient to cast an instant after starting the channel for another skill. This rotation distributes blast finishers along the front end so that you can help burst down enemies quickly. For a longer battle, you can swap Arcane Wave for use in the second half of the rotation before swapping to Water so that you have a lower variance of might throughout the battle. Note that this is just a basic rotation and will have to be altered for pretty much every application to any real battle. For example, I'll use Stone Form in Earth to avoid dodging, or in air, I'll cast Swirling Winds to block projectiles, or Gale to interrupt a foe even though it's a DPS lost. You'll still want to keep up your rhythm of Flame Wall, Burning Speed, swapping to air for about 4 to 5 seconds, then swapping to either Water or Earth for the blast finisher, then swapping to air as soon as possible, then finally back to fire about 3 seconds after the attunement is off cooldown to maintain might and fury. While this is not the optimal build for a Lightning Hammer, sometimes the blind and blast from Lightning Hammer are just too useful to overlook, especially when clearing trash mobs. If using Lightning Hammer, remember to swap the trait Pyromancer's Alacrity for Conjurer, as the reduced fire spell cooldown will not be useful for this rotation. and the additional charges on your lightning hammer will help this rotation flow much more smoothly. Lay down a flame wall, then use burning speed to land just past the enemies and hit as many as possible with the blast. Swap to Earth to cast Arcane Brilliance, Magnetic Wave, and Ring of Earth in the flame wall, then swap to Water to cast Comet and the Conjurer Lightning Hammer. Swap to Air, cast Arcane Wave, and then auto-attack while sitting in the flame wall. While you can camp air attunement, you can boost your DPS slightly by swapping out of air for the first 2 strikes of the Lightning Hammer chain to proc the Master level minor traits, Sunspot, and Electric Discharge. And do your best to return to air attunement before the 3rd strike connects to regain that 10% damage bonus from the trait Air Training. Refrain from swapping when the hammer has 11 or fewer charges, so that all attunements will be ready for the next repetition of this rotation. Also remember to drop your lightning hammer when it has 1 charge left. This rotation will grant about 15 stacks of might and maintain 100% fury uptime for your group. Additionally, burning speed and flame wall can help you stack a hefty amount of vulnerability on an enemy. In my testing, I noticed that strikes from the lightning hammer with this build were doing about 20 to 30% less damage than using a standard scepter hammer lightning build such as 30, 10, 10, 20, 0. This is an effect of having fewer damage modifiers as well as fewer stacks of might. Thanks for watching my video on the Dagger focus build that I'm running right now. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below in the comments section.